Welcome to another Thursday night Scrap Your Scraps. Tonight we're going to be making watercolor birthday cards. Alright, so we're going to make our first card and we're going to be using Distress pencil crayons, and I am going to be making birthday themed cards today. But I'm going to show you a technique which is not new. Other people have used it all over the internet. Whoops! So you just need some water. I'm gooping up my tray with water. I'm going to put all that water in a nice little pile, and I'm going to wet the tip of my pencil, and I'm going to go in and actually color where I want to see the color. So let's see. Now, the easiest way to get these out when they're in there is to press this end, and they literally just pop right out. All right. Need that to have a second more. There we go. And what you want to do is you want to get the stamp covered with the color that you're using. So I've got some blue up there. I want to add just a little more. You don't want it to be sopping wet, because if it's sopping wet, you'll notice that it gets in the crevices. But you do want to make sure you get all the tips. And it's okay if it dries, because we're going to reactivate it anyway. And I just want to, I'm going to try again on this happy birthday, because I feel like it's going inside the words, which will not make it very clear. Almost rubbing it off again. So you know what? I am going to mask the happy birthday words, because I'm going to put a sentiment on this anyway. This is going to be used for background, so let's get a little piece of tape. And controlled stamping like this is really fun, because you can stamp the original and then just off stamp, which is the technique I'm going to show you today. Okay, so let's get a little hot pink in there, and maybe I'll get a different pile of water. Just let it sit there for a minute till you start seeing the color coming off. And this is the icing that I'm coloring. And it's okay for it to go dry in between, just as long as it's completely covered. Okay. So this is going to be our plate. I'm still going to use this color because I do like this color. But you do have to be so careful about getting it in the grooves. You don't want it to be too watery that it falls in the grooves, but you don't want it to not be watery enough to color the surface. And we are going to use that's fired brick, rusty hinge. Oh, let's use some walnut stain for the actual cake. I'm just going to let it do its thing here. So just getting those edge pieces. Don't know how successful I am yet, but we will see. And then a nice bright yellow. So what I've used so far is picked raspberry, salty ocean, savage patina, and walnut stain. And then this is mustard seed for the light, the little hearts at the top. This is very detailed. You can use lots of stamps that are not quite as detailed, and you don't have to worry about everything that I'm worrying about. Okay, So there's my stamp colored. And I'm just going to give it a quick mist. Maybe a little more. There we go. And I'm going to stamp it down. 1. Ah, it's not too bad. And 2. And I probably should have. I'm going to leave that. I was going to do 3, but my card is a bit short. So there you go. It does not look too bad. So that's another way to use your pencils. Then if I let this dry, we're going to put that to one side. I'm using whatever paper I have lying around. This isn't watercolor paper necessarily. It's smooth paper for sure. Now this is a larger piece, so hopefully I'll be able to do this. So I'm going to wet it again. And this time I'm going to start further up. There we go. And it's all right if it starts to waver. You just don't want it to get too wet. And so we are using the same stamp. I haven't changed the stamp yet. The stamp is just, the color has just been added, and I've already got a variety of stamping. So this one is very faded, which is the look I was going for because it is your off stamp. Okay, and this one is very bright. Okay, so let's just give that a little bit of a clean. Make sure we pick everything up. All right, put that aside. And now we're going to make a sentiment. So I have this happy birthday stamp that I just replaced off camera. And we are going to use some villainous potion. And on a piece of extra paper, we're going to make 2 sentiments. And I'm going to color that all over. And this we're going to do, we're not going to do offshoots with, meaning stamp without adding water or adding more pigment. So these crayons are highly pigmented, and you just have to be careful not to pull the color off. I'm kind of dotting it on at this point to some of the spots that it looks like it's been pulled off of. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for a minute, and now I want to do a background, watercolor background, and I'm going to use the same technique of wetting my pencil crayon, but I'm going to use a watercolor pen. I'm using the fattest nib I have. If I can get it off, there we go. For some reason, the tip on this wants to curl, and I think it's for some reason because it's not retracting properly. It's supposed to be able to pull out to be extra thick and then also push in, but it doesn't want to go back in. So failure on the part of that. And I'm just going to fill this up with water because I forgot to do that before camera. So this is how you can just, it fits, literally fits right inside that water brush. And just make sure the water is flowing. You don't need a lot of water. Okay, there we go. So As I said, I'm wetting the tip, and I'm getting the pigment off the tip of this. And the more pigment I have, obviously, the more intense the color. And I'm just kind of doing swirling motions. And the nice thing about this pigment is you can go back in and rework it. You just want to make sure that whatever you have that is dark, and I just need some extra water. I'm already running out of water here. You can just go in and thin that out. You just don't want to leave a dark halo. I need just a little bit more down here. And you can see how it just keeps re-wetting. Now, I'm going to go in and I'm really going to blur that edge as much as I can around those cakes. You can see there's just so much pigment in here that I can just move it around all over the paper, which is crazy. And just keep wetting my brush, squishing my brush until I like the finished work, until it thins it out and makes me happy, and until I get as much of that hard edge hidden as I possibly can. There we go. I'm starting with the purple layer, and now we're going to dry this. So it doesn't matter if I dry my pencil, it's not like ink. It won't disappear. So I'm going to dry the back a little. We all know that when you dry the back of something wet, it curls. But then when you flip it over and dry the front, it flattens out again. And this is, like I said, not media paper, so it's going to have more of a life of its own than media paper would. It's not heavy. So I'm doing a lot of liquid on this. And if it bothers you, then you just take your pencil crayons, put it off to the side, put some weight on it. And now we're going to work this one. This one I'm going to start off with, I'm going to try a bit of a different technique. So I'm going to go in with my dry pencil and just lightly color around, all in the same direction. And I'm going to build layers on this one. I'm going to use a different brush. Make sure I've got a clean brush. It's got a lot of water in it, so we're good to go. So now I'm just activating all of that yellow. And I like the scribbling marks, but I don't want too much of them. And I can just go in and keep moving that yellow ink around, and I'll show you in a moment because I've got it very, very light. But you'll be able to see how I've moved the ink around. So that's a different way of adding color. And now it's not dark enough for me, so I'm just going to dry this up. And you want it really dry before you add another layer of color. And I'm not worried about the warping because I'll take care of that. Now I'm going to go back in with my yellow, same direction as I did before, and just go down the center section, leaving the outer edge. Across the top, maybe a little more in there. And I'm going to go back in with my pen. There we go. Now we're getting more color. The reason I keep dipping in water is it helps to move the liquid from the barrel of my pen, or of my water brush. Okay, now I'm going to try and move as much of this out of the center as I can to the edge. Okay, and I still see some spots that I'm missing, so we're going to dry this up. And I'm just going to, my third coat I go in and I just kind of even out what I see is missing. And then we're going to add our second color. As long as you keep drying in between layers, you can build your color with your pencil crayon. If you put it all on the same wet layer, it's a bit of a problem. Okay, so I'm going to come from in here out. Whoops. Bit of green on there. So I need a little bit more color along the edge here. I'm happy with this side, so I am just gonna, whoops, wrong pen. And I'm not getting the color I want, so let's just lay some water on there. And hopefully it won't be too much. I'm just laying that down there. And now I'm going to bleed that out. There. Now we're going to dry that layer and we're going to add a little more color. I'm going to add some green in there. I have some allergies today, so I apologize for the sniffing. It's very hot in Ontario the last couple of days. We've had 15 degrees in the middle of February. It's crazy. All right, so I need this to dry just a bit more, and I'm going to flatten it a tiny bit. Take our guy out of here. There we go. Alrighty. Now I want to bleed in a little bit of the red. Whoops, this is the one that I did with water. Sorry, I've forgotten what my technique was for this one. So we're going to get our wet pen and we're going to smoosh this in the center section out to the edge. Still always going in the same direction. Okay, let's go in with our big pen, our big brush rather, and we're going to smudge that out. For sure, right to the edge. We want to get that color right along the edge. Okay, now I just want plain water. There we go. Clean up my space. I'm just going to go in with plain water to blend these two together a little bit more. And it starts to give that kind of tie-dye look, I call that. Don't know if that's the proper name for it, but... And you can start to see those lines that we originally have are disappearing. some places where the color might have been a little too dark, they may not be disappearing in the way that, or I had hoped, like right there. Now we've got sort of a textured surface. This is very hard edged, but we're going to take care of that in our last layer. And we're all using, I should tell you that the set that we are using is set number, don't know where I put my lid. Oh, underneath. This is set number 1. Let's flip over to the first one. And now we're going to add our green color. This is still just a bit damp. It's starting to wrinkle, but that's because I'm not using proper media paper. If you don't want the wrinkles and the texture that the paper adds, then you pick the paper that you choose. I'm just going to run a bead of water across the back just to try to keep the paper flatter. This is what I do to keep the paper flat, because it acts as a to bend it in the opposite direction. Okay, so now we're going to get some of the Savage Patina, and this one I did with shading, so I'm just going to shade very lightly down the center, trying not to be too harsh. We're going to use our smaller brush, and we're going to start to wash that out. And you know what I think I need? I think I need more on the edge here. So I'm actually going to draw that all the way along the edge. Back to the proper pen that I was using before. So trying to keep from seeing lines, but making sure you have the color added. Okay, so now we're starting to see some interesting things happen. Drying it off. These take a while, but they're fun. Now I'm going to go in and do a much harsher line because this is not dark enough for me. So that's how you get to the point where you figure out how dark you want to go, is you just keep adding layers. Now this I'm not going to leave as a flat line. I'm just getting the dark that I can get along the edge there. Okay. And now I'm going to go in and do that random scribbling so that it kind of breaks up that line I've just created. And we're just going to do the 2 colors for this one. Start down on this corner. Just wobble that all the way through. So you still, because we dried the yellow, you still see that yellow coming through. Now in retrospect, because of all the layers that I have here, I probably should have used a mixed media paper of some sort or a watercolor paper, but it's all good. And there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to get the right color blend there. Maybe if I turn that one off. There we go. So now you can see that moving into the yellow, moving into the circle with our stamp image. So this one is ready. We're just going to let that dry. And this one got a bit of water on it. Now these reactivate, so you got to remember to keep water away from them when you're not using them. So here I'm just going to go in a little bit with my blue. Oh, this one I was doing differently. Sorry, let me just wash that away. Okay, so this one I was doing off the tip. Right. So I'm just going to add my blue along the edge here. Okay, so now, again, I'm going to take the color out of my watercolor pen and I'm going to go in and smear this. You're not adding any more color. You want to make sure the color is out and you're just blending. And 3 layers is about as far as you can go because on cheap paper, because I can feel this peeling now. All right. So this is still wet. Let's see how that looks when it dries. Okay, so here is our 2. I'm just going to put the light on because I need to see what I'm doing. I don't need it that close. So here are our 2 cards. A couple of things need to be done. We are going to do our stamping. So I have a piece of card, or I had a piece of card. Oh, there it is. Okay, and I'm just going to stamp right on here. So I'm going to mist the watercolor, let it sit for a minute, and stamp. And then I'm going to go in with the wet tip of my pencil and go over this again. And I'm just going to dry this quickly. So just drying it just a little bit, because right now it's quite wet. So I can now kind of pull out some spots where there's too much and give it a quick mist. Let it sit for a minute. Whoop. And stamp again. All right. There you go. This is not meant to look crisp and clean. This is meant to look distressed and sort of mixed media like. Well, it is mixed media like. Distressed, I guess I'm trying to say. And let's put out our little cutter. And we're going to trim these down. Oh, you know what? I'm going to separate them first because they're completely different in orientation. There we go. And we've got our second happy. And now we get our pop dots. We are going to put some dots on the back of these. You don't have to use this much tape. I just happen to have this tape available. There we go. Just enough. All right, so those are now 3D and ready to move, and they are dry. These guys, I just want to do some line work, so I'm going to get a 0.8 pen, if I can find one. And I'm going to do loose lines. So I'm going to start in the corner, starting in this corner, and I'm only going a third of the way and letting it dribble off at the edge, and then a third of the way, and then a third of the way. So they're sketchy lines, and they cross over each other at the ends. Because the whole idea of this card is very open and loose. I am keeping this the size of the card base. Oh, that did not fold well. Got to make sure you pay attention to your folding. If you need to, use your bone folder to make that a nice crisp edge. And I'm going to keep this oh, it's just under, so that actually works well. And now I'm going to use these guys again, right up to the edge. This one can go in the center. This one I'm going to put at the other side, right along the edge. And then I'm going to take the small one on this one, and it's going to go along the edge at the bottom. Make sure it doesn't show. Trim off what you don't need. And then I'm going to fit that there and take a small piece of this. Oops. The actual 3D tape. There we go. Taking this off. Centering it on our card, make sure you have the opening at the right side. Putting that down nice and flush. Adding your happy birthday. Right there. And there's your card. Let's take the light off there. That's one. This one we're going to add white trim. So get yourself a 0.8 or a 0.10 white jelly roll. That's what I use. Let's see. 8 white. Perfect. And these you always have to get started a little bit. So find something that is paper-like. There you go. And just scrape off the leftover that usually gets around the ball. And this one we're going to do sketch lines, but we're going to do them about 1/8 of an inch. Whoops, lost my pen. There we go. And now we're going to stick that down close to the edge. This one is a full card. It's not cut down. And the reason we're putting so much pop dot on there is to keep it flat. And this can go across there. And I'm just going to trim half a piece here. And put that across there. That goes back. Get out our card base. Make sure we have a nice crisp fold. Make sure we have the opening, and of course we made both of these horizontal or vertical. You could also do them horizontal. Lining this up with the edges of the card base. There you go. Getting our happy birthday. Do I want to put it down there? I don't think I do. I'll put it right there. Okay, so here are our 2 finished cards. We have our, we've used, just make sure I've got everything here. And as you can see, the ink comes off, so I ended up getting a little bit of blue, but you just water it down to wash it off your page. So there's the cards. I ended up using salvaged patina and mustard seed to create this this combination of color. Okay, and on this one I used Villainous Potion, then I used picked raspberry and salty ocean to create this mix. So that's how we ended with these color lines. And my color can is not great. I apologize for that. And this is all from set 1. So you can do the same technique using all of the other different sets. That's it for now. If you liked this video, please feel free to share with friends. Otherwise, like and subscribe at the end of the video.